Cut them off, huh?
Well, we ain't got ready there. You guys ready enough? Getting Steve to buy a house over there?
Boy, we're going to go into closed session like instantly. Cool. I like that.
Everybody ready? Okay, I'll call to order the August 17th, 2017 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Director Snyder? Here. Patino? Richardson? Here. Williams? Wolf?
Here.
Hartman? Here. Adam? Here. Lavanino? Here. Sierra? Here. Clark? Here. Bennett?
Here.
Lizalde?
Here.
And Chair Mosby.
Here. At this time, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item of business is closed session. Will the clerk please read the item into the record?
Item C1 is conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code Section 54956.9A. This is in regards to Venico LLC, U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the District of Delaware, case number 17-10828. Item C2 is conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6. The district designated representatives are Aaron Arlen-Janae and Christina Aguilar. Employee organizations are Engineers and Technicians Association, Service Employees International Union, Local 620, and Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Employees Association. Unrepresented employees are the management and confidential unrepresented employees. Item C3 is the Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1 for the Air Pollution Control Officer. Item C4 is the Public Employee Appointment, Government Code Section 54957B1 for the Air Pollution Control Officer.
And Mr. Chair, just to let you and the public know, we expect about an hour for closed session, and then we'll be back sometime around 2.
All right, everybody got that? 1 hour? We'll adjourn now to closed session.
We're calling to order the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board Hearing Board Nominating Committee. Would you read the, we have to convene it, roll call.
All right. Director Williams? Bennett?
Here.
Richardson?
Here.
Adam? Here. And Patino.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, the new business. We're going to discuss and consider options for filling the expiring term of Robert Saperstein, who holds the legal representative position with the APCD board. Mr. Saperstein, is he here?
He's not here.
No, okay. He's indicated that by memo that he's willing to continue on with the position.
Correct.
Can I have a motion accepting his considerations?
So move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passed. 3, 2 abstentions, 2 absent.
Correct.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
We're on.
Are good?
Yeah.
You probably went home.
Did you want to report on closed session? Yes, we're all back now. Peter, Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We're back.
The board took no action in closed session that requires a report. Thank you.
All right, the next item of business is the approval of the minutes from the June 15th, 2017 meeting. Is there any questions?
Move we approve.
Second.
Any discussion? And John's back, so roll call vote.
Director Snyder?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Lavanino? Sierra?
Aye.
Clark? Bennett has left. Lazalde?
Aye.
And Chair Mosby.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 10-0.
Okay, the next item is the approval of administrative items. Does any board member wish to pull any of these items?
I'll move the item 5 administrative items.
Mr. Chair, I have a request to consider item A8 in terms of the scheduled, proposed scheduling of a regular meeting on September 21st. So if it's okay, we'll pull that, have it read, and I'll give you a short report.
That'd be a good idea.
All right, item A8 is to amend the Board of Directors' regular meeting schedule for 2017 to hold a regular meeting on September 21st, 2017 at 1 p.m. in the Board of Supervisors hearing room at 511 East Lakeside Parkway, Santa Maria, California, with remote testimony and participation at the Board of Supervisors hearing room at 105 East Anapamu Street, Santa Barbara, California.
Mr. Chair, I proposed this date for this particular item only because SBCAG was meeting that day, and I thought it'd be the most convenient for the board. But I understand that's Rosh Hashanah, and there's a few board members that are not going to be available, and also it's a difficult meeting for some people to make. So I'd like to suggest you move that up to another date that is convenient to as many board members as possible. I did make a quick check with the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors is meeting in Santa Maria on the 19th of September, the same week. And the week before that, on the 12th of September, you're meeting in Santa Barbara. So I know that's only 5 of you, but those are 2 meetings where at least 5 people of this board are meeting, assuming they're all there that day. So I don't know if you can get your calendars out and pick another date, but I recommend you move it up to earlier in the month than the 21st.
Got an idea over here?
Well, the 19th, just so you know, that meeting's 7 hours and 30 minutes right now, and that is usually way under what the meeting goes. So I think the 19th may be a little bit ambitious.
The 12th through the 15th is the League of California Cities annual convention.
It starts on the 13th, not the
It
12th.
starts at noon on the 13th.
Right, so the 12th on Tuesday, we have a city council meeting starts at 2 o'clock, but beforehand, before 2 o'clock, I would be available on that Tuesday.
Yep.
And then, but from Wednesday forward is League of Cities meetings, yeah.
If it were early enough on the 12th.
Right, so if it's for myself, if it was before 2 o'clock, like if it was at 1 o'clock, that could be fine.
Earlier in the month would work too. I don't know if the board's meeting on the 5th of September. Are you dark? Okay.
Labor Day?
Oh, that's
The day
right. That's
after
Labor Day
Labor Day.
weekend. LAFCO is meeting on the 7th of September, so some of you get together for LAFCO. 7th?
We have LAFCO and APCD.
I didn't note where LAFCO.
We do it at 10 o'clock on that day.
So if we did it at LAFCO, how many of us? It's Joan
What day is that?
It's a Thursday.
on the 7th, and then we could,
At what time?
and then you
It
guys
start-
could be in Santa Maria.
1 to 4.
Okay.
1
That
to
could work.
whatever.
I need to quickly check to see where that meeting is.
APCD.
Santa Barbara.
Chairman, what time?
What day are you on?
What time will we meet on that day?
I would recommend, if just to throw something out for discussion, noon on September 7th in Santa
I have
Barbara.
a noon to 2, but after 2 or before noon would be fine.
How about 11 to 12?
11 o'clock?
Can we do it after LAFCO?
Sure.
Sure.
I have the APCD South Central Basin Council meeting that I cannot miss.
Oh, yeah, that's a really, that's a,
How long would LAFCO take?
I don't
usually
think
we're
the
done at
agenda's that.
4.
It could be 2-3 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
What time does it start?
1.
So how about 4 o'clock on the 7th?
Oh, you're an alternate though, so you don't have to show.
Me?
Oh, he's not an alternate anymore. He's a voting
Put
member.
that finger down on the voting member.
And proud of it.
How about,
8 years.
4 p.m. on the 7th, after
What?
LAFCO?
4 p.m. on the 7th? It's 4 p.m. on...
I'd also throw out 3:30. LAFCO often is over before.
3:30 on the 7th?
3:30 on the 7th.
September, yeah, Santa Barbara, with remote testimony available in Santa Maria.
That's fine.
Meeting in Santa Maria.
I'm
No,
good.
Meeting here. You'll be here anyway for LAFCO.
Okay, after LAFCO.
3:30 would be the exact time for the purposes of a motion. So if that works, we just need a motion and a second and a vote.
I move that the APCD meeting be on September 7th at 3:30 p.m. in the Santa Barbara office with remote testimony in Santa Maria.
Second.
It's your first and second.
Roll call.
Call a vote.
Director Snyder?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Lavanino? Sierra? Clark? Lazalde?
Aye.
And Chair Mosby.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
I move we accept the balance of the administrative items.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Okay. Director Snyder?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Wolf? Hartman? Adam? Lavanino?
Aye.
Sierra? Clark? Lazalde?
Aye.
Chair Mosby.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
The next item is public comment. Now is the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Are there requests?
I have no speaker slips.
No speaker slips. The next item is director's report. To give your report to the board.
Okay. I have 3 items to report on this afternoon. First off, I'd like to provide an update on the state's wood smoke reduction program. It relates to administrative item A7 that pertains to our locally funded mitigation program to replace out old fireplaces with gas inserts. On August 7th, the California Air Resources Board issued their draft program guidelines for the statewide wood smoke reduction program. Comments are due later this month on the 21st. We're working with CAPCOA to analyze the guidelines, and we will be submitting comments to the state. Currently, there's $5 million that are available for statewide use to replace out these wood stoves on a voluntary basis. They have not yet determined how they're going to allocate the funds from district to district, but the air districts have been identified as the agency to implement the program if they elect to do so within the county. As far as a statewide approach, they are placing a high priority for projects in low-income communities and households, and they've also developed a map for the entire state that was able to identify where those regions would be included. In Santa Barbara County, it's not like the Cal Enviro screen that's another mapping tool. It has actually a wider brush of regions in our area that would be eligible under the low-income category. Once the program guidelines have been finalized by ARB, we'll bring them back to your board to seek approval to extend our existing wood stove reduction program countywide. The next item relates to a presentation you received at your June meeting on local greenhouse gas mitigation options. As identified in that staff report, we now are in the process of planning 2 public workshops to solicit input from the public on mitigation measures. We will be inviting local agencies who lead the CEQA review process, as well as project proponents and the public to weigh in on these measures. The dates have been finalized and the locations. On September 20th at the Santa Barbara Library, we'll hold a workshop, and that'll be followed the following day on the 21st, and from 3:30 to 5:30. After the workshop, we'll be revising the information that we presented to your board on the handful of measures and making that available to the lead agencies as they go through their review and approval of projects that are requiring that type of analysis. In addition, Santa Barbara County Planning Commission has requested the Air District presentation on greenhouse gas issues, including recent legislation and the mitigation options that we're going through workshop, and that presentation is set for September 27th. Then the last item I'd like to brief you on relates to legislation that's been passed into law in California pertaining to air quality. I talked briefly about this at our last meeting. Cap and trade, I'm sure most of you have heard, cap and trade was extended on July 17th. AB 398 was passed by the legislature to extend the cap and trade program out to 2030. It was passed with a 2/3 supermajority, which was important as far as the protecting of the legislation from any legal challenges. In addition to extending the program life, the legislation also made changes on how the system operates, but instead of going through all of those now, knowing that time's of an essence, I'll just move on to the other legislative items. One aspect of AB 398 that was identified is that it prohibits air districts from adopting or implementing rules locally for CO2 reductions from sources that are already part of cap and trade. That doesn't have direct implications on our region. Currently, our rules and regulations are focused and historically and currently focused on criteria pollutants. A companion bill to AB 398 was also passed, and the emphasis of this bill was to ensure that criteria pollutants and air toxic emissions are reduced statewide, and focusing on the areas most impacted by this pollution, the environmental justice regions of California. AB 617, Garcia's bill, was passed, and the communities are identified using CalEnviroscreen, and as I mentioned, it's a mapping tool that identifies communities throughout California most affected by the sources of pollution. In Santa Barbara County, using CalEnviroscreen, we do not have any communities that raise above the threshold of a community of concern. So that's a good thing for us, obviously, and we want to stay in that category for sure. Unfortunately, the downside is it makes us it's more difficult for us to secure funding when funding comes through the cap and trade revenue targeted for those specific communities. There are a few requirements that will affect a handful of sources in our region under AB 617. Those are mainly the large oil and gas operations. The district will need to review the best available control requirements for facilities that emit over 250 tons per year. These sources with potential to emit more than 250 tons per year will also be required to report criteria and toxic emissions into a new state reporting system. And it also includes, for our region, an automatic increase in the maximum penalty fees for emission violations by CPI each year. The CAPCOA was very concerned about both of these bills when they were going forward. It increased a lot of the local requirements, and that's what I discussed at our last board meeting, without any funding identified in order to do so. And just next week, actually, they have earmarked the Assembly Budget Subcommittee to figure out how funding can be provided to the air districts to carry out this work. So they're holding a hearing up in Sacramento on the greenhouse gas funds for incentive programs, because that's a big part of this piece of legislation, but also for funding allocations for the air districts to implement 617. And that concludes the director's report.
Yeah, thank you. Then next, any questions? Okay, the next item is discussion item number 1. Will the clerk read it into the record?
Item number 1 is to receive a presentation and the 2016 Annual Ambient Air Quality Report for Santa Barbara County.
All right. Each year, the Air District compiles an annual air quality report once the data for the prior year has been certified and submitted to both ARB and EPA. Today, Joel Cordis, Information Technology and Monitoring Supervisor of the Administrative Division, will provide you the presentation. Jill's section is responsible for compiling and reporting this data.
Chair Mosby, members of the board, my name is Joel Cordes. I'm supervisor of air monitoring and IT at the APCD. Fires highlighted the air quality in Santa Barbara County for 2016. Both the Sherpa fires and the Canyon fires burned up around 2 of our monitoring stations. However, they both survived. This picture kind of shows how close the fire actually burned up to one of our stations. One station lost power and the other station did not, and which provided us some interesting data, plus provided some high concentrations that will remain a blip on our air quality annual trends. In this presentation, I will summarize the air quality in 2016. I will provide an annual summary of each pollutant, followed by a multi-year trend plot. I will end with a summary of the air quality index. The district has the district has a robust network of 18 air monitoring stations. The locations of these sites were chosen to meet EPA's network requirements. The network is composed of SLAM sites, which stands for State and Local Air Monitoring Stations, which are positioned to measure air quality in populated areas, and industrial monitors, which are sited to measure the impacts from industrial operations. The presentation will focus on 6 main primary pollutants: ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, both PM10, which is particulate less than 10 microns in diameter, and PM25, which is less than 2.5 microns in diameter. These pollutants are measured at different stations throughout the county, but are not measured at every station. Both EPA and California Air Resources Board, or CARB, have established health-based standards for each of these pollutants. The California ambient air quality standards are generally more restrictive or protective than the EPA standards. These standards are based on different averaging, 1-hour intervals, 8-hour, 24, or annual, and the standards are set at levels which would be considered unhealthy air based on scientific studies. Attainment determination is based on 3 years of data, so even if we exceed a standard in any given year, we may not violate the standard. We currently violate the standards for ozone for the California standard and for the PM10 for the state standard. In 2016, we met the federal and state standards for all pollutants except for ozone and PM10. We exceeded both the federal and state 8-hour ozone standard on 3 days. This compares with 2 days in 2015. We typically do not exceed the federal PM10 standard. However, in 2016, due to both the Sherpa and Canyon fires, we exceeded the federal PM10 standard on 9 days and the state 24-hour standard on 44 days. This is up from 2016 when we exceeded on 15 days for the state PM standard. We also exceeded the state annual standard for PM10. So ozone is measured at 12 sites in the county. This map shows the maximum 8-hour averages of ozone recorded at each of the sites in 2016. Los Flores Canyon recorded the highest at 75 parts per billion, followed by Santa Barbara, El Capitan, Goleta, and Paradise Road. These are also the sites which we exceeded the ozone standard this year. So when we're looking at this, I'm comparing these with the federal standards. Although the state standard is also at 70, the state standard is determined a different way, so when we exceed one, we may or may not exceed the other. So this chart shows the trend from
I have a quick question.
Oh, yes,
Quick
sir.
question.
On your health-based standards for ozone,
Yes.
you show a California standard is .070 parts per billion. And then the other chart, you show it as 70 parts per billion. There seems to me there'd be quite a difference.
Did I mistype that?
Yeah, right. You see the top?
That's 70 parts per million, 0.07 parts per million, and we generally refer to that as 70 parts per billion, and it's the same
Then
thing.
you got PBB back there. That's why it looks like parts per billion. Not parts ppm, do you? Oh, it is ppm. My mistake.
Okay,
I didn't read that closely. I'm terribly sorry.
no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a trend from 1980 to 2006 of all the ozone standard. The blue line shows the second maximum 1 hour average, which we compared with it's a retired federal standard of 125, but we keep that in there for a trend to show that we are continuing to improve. The red line shows the fourth highest 8 hour average for each year compared with the federal standard of 70 parts per billion. In 2014, as you can see, we were actually over the standard. However, since the standards are based on 3 years of data, the overall 3-year average keeps us below the standard and in attainment for the federal standard. And for interest of time, that's where we're just comparing these with the federal standards. The state standards are a little bit different, which we do not meet at this time. So nitrogen dioxide, we measured that at 11 sites. So this map shows the maximum 1 hour averages at each site. Santa Barbara was the highest with 52 parts per billion, followed by Santa Maria and Lompoc. And these sites we'd expect to be the highest because they're in urban areas with high automobile traffic. So the trend for nitrogen dioxide over the years, so we plotted the 98th percentile of the 1 hour average each year in the blue line, comparing with the standard of 100. And the red line shows the site with the highest annual average each year compared with the federal standard of 53. Moving on to carbon monoxide, we measure that at 6 sites. This map shows the maximum 1 hour readings at each site. Los Flores Canyon had the highest with 24.6 ppm, or parts per million. And this was actually recorded when the Sherpa fire was burning up around the station. So with that exception, Santa Maria was the next highest with 3.6 parts per million, followed by Santa Barbara and Goleta. Again, these are the sites in the urban areas with high automobile traffic. The carbon monoxide trend shows that we are below the standards and have improved over the past 35 years, except for the recent blip, which was caused by the Sherpa fire. The blue line shows the second maximum 1 hour value compared with the federal standard of 35 parts per million, and the red line shows the second maximum 8 hour value compared with the federal standard of 9 parts per billion. So sulfur dioxide, we measured that at 6 sites. So this map's showing the highest 1 hour averages at each site in the county. Los Flores Canyon site had the highest with 12, which was also occurred when the Sherpa fire was burning up towards the station. The other ones are all within the baseline of 0 to 5 ppb, which is kind of the background noise level that we record. So for the sulfur dioxide trend, we look at the blue line plots the highest 99th percentile 1 hour average compared with the federal standard of 75, while the red line shows the second maximum 24 hour average for each year compared with the federal standard of 40. The high values in 2013 were due to some equipment breakdowns at a facility. PM10, particulate matter less than 10 microns, is measured at 7 sites. The maximum 24-hour averages are shown in for each of the sites on the map. This was an unusual year for PM due to the 2 fires. We recorded high readings as the fires burned near the stations, and also again in the following weeks and months after the fires, when the wind would blow the dirt and ash from the barren land. Los Flores Canyon had the highest reading of 448 micrograms per cubic meter, followed by our Vandenberg Air Force Base site and El Capitan. Excluding the fire-related data, Santa Maria was the highest with 79 micrograms per cubic meter. So we exceeded the federal 24-hour standard on 9 days and the state 24-hour standard on 44 days. So monitoring for PM10 began in 1986, so we don't have as many years for comparison. The blue line shows the second maximum 24-hour average for each year compared with both the federal standard of 150 and the state standard of 50. We were above the federal standard in 2016. However, we have submitted a letter to EPA requesting that these readings related to the fire be designated as exceptional events so that they will be excluded for regulatory determinations. And in addition, we do not meet the state 24-hour or annual standards. PM 2.5, or particulate matter less than 2.5 microns, is measured at 4 sites. Lompoc measured the highest in the county with 30 micrograms per cubic meter, followed by Goleta. None of these readings appeared to be influenced directly by the fires. The Santa Barbara site is operated by the California Air Resources Board and did not monitor PM in 2016 due to safety issues of maintaining equipment on their roof. This has been resolved and the PM samplers are being turned on back on actually this week. PM 2.5 is our newest parameter, which began sampling in 1999. The blue line shows the 98th percentile of the 24-hour averages compared with the federal standard of 35. The red line shows the highest annual averages for each year. We are below both of these standards. So each pollutant has different concentration levels which are considered unhealthy. To help the public better understand the levels of concern for each pollutant, EPA devised a scale called the Air Quality Index, or AQI, which normalizes all of the different concentrations to a single scale. On this scale, an index of 0 to 50 is considered good and has a color code of green. On the 51 to 100 is moderate, has a color code of yellow. 101 to 150 is unhealthy for sensitive groups with a color of orange. And then over 150, there are different levels of unhealthy, starting with the color of red. So we update the AQI on our website every hour to help the people of Santa Barbara County keep informed about our air. This pie chart shows the breakdown of the AQI for 2016. We had 264 days of good air, which is up from 2015 when we had 249 days. 90 days of moderate. However, in 2016, we had more days in the unhealthy range, 9 days unhealthy for sensitive groups and 2 days for unhealthy range. And these were again affected by the fires. So this last slide is a stacked bar chart which shows the trend of the AQI index from 1980 through 2016. So that we have one reading for each day of the year, so the more green we see, the better off we are, which I'd say the trend is showing that we are continuing to see more green on the chart. So, and that concludes my presentation, and if there are any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, what happened in 1987?
In 1987?
Yes.
For which, on which?
On the AQI chart.
1987.
You see the green is only
60, 70 days.
Was it unhealthy?
Oh, 88?
Yeah,
those were, back then we had a lot, the ozone concentrations were a lot higher, and we had a lot more days of high values. And
was there a reason for that? I mean, like fire or something?
More emissions in the air.
Okay.
Older cars.
These trends actually do show that by we are reducing emissions, and it does improve the air quality. And as far as specifically with that year, I would have to research it more specific.
It's a dramatic difference. That's why, and it's a definite improvement, no question. Thank you.
Any public comment?
I have no speaker slips.
I'm just curious, how far back does like APCD records go? I mean, like, do we have historical 1950s and 60s, or were we measuring that back then? We weren't.
Some of the we started monitoring in the 70s. The records are kind of sketchy back then, but we do have some records, and so 1980 is when
that's our base,
where we have pretty reliable records.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item is discussion item number 2. You read that one into the record.
Item number 2 is to approve a resolution which contains the following actions. A, revise the 2016 Ozone Plan Control Measure Implementation Schedule as follows. First, amend the implementation schedule from 2017 to 2018 for 3 NOx control measures for boilers, water heaters, and process heaters. That's Rule 342, 360, and 361. And second, move to contingency 3 ROC control measures regarding solvent cleaning, surface coating of wood products, and graphic arts products. That's Rule 321, 351, and 354. B, adopt the California Environmental Quality Act findings that include a determination that an addendum has been prepared pursuant to CEQA, and the addendum, together with a final environmental impact report for the 2010 Clean Air Plan, has been reviewed and considered by the board prior to approval of this project. And C, authorize the control officer to transmit the revised 2016 Ozone Plan Control Measure Implementation Schedule to the California Air Resources Board.
All right, I will hand it off quickly to Molly. We've been talking about this issue for the past few meetings of the APCD. In March, we were able to provide background information through a receive and file. In April of this year, our designation was actually finalized by the state and issued in the Office of Administrative Law that we are now in non-attainment transitional. And as of such, we are required by the Health and Safety Code to take a look at our rule implementation schedule and determine how best to move forward. So today, Molly Pearson, the Planning and Grant Supervisor on the Technology and Environmental Assessment Division, will present to you on this item.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Mosby and members of the board. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. As Aaron said, I'm Molly Pearson, Planning and Grant Supervisor. I'll give you a brief overview of the presentation. First, I'll review the 2016 Ozone Plan and control measures. There's a picture of the plan, if you remember that. We'll talk about how we were designated non-attainment transitional, go through the Community Advisory Council process, discuss some additional analysis we did after the March board meeting, and go over the recommended actions for today. And there's just 7 slides, and if possible, it'd be great if you could hold your questions until the end. So the 2016 plan, as required by the California Clean Air Act, so now we're talking about the state ozone standard. Your board adopted this plan and its related control measures in October of last year. At that time, our official designation from the California Air Resources Board was non-attainment. As an area that's designated non-attainment, our plan included a schedule to adopt all feasible measures in an expeditious manner over the next 3 years. This has been our strategy since we developed our first state plan in 1991, and since that first plan, the district has developed 8 plan updates on a 3-year cycle, and we've adopted over 25 control measures. Those measures have reduced emissions of both nitrogen oxides, or NOx, and reactive organic compounds, or ROC. So this approach, combined with other federal, state, and local efforts, have gotten us to where we are now. The 2016 ozone plan included 6 control measures, the 6 that you see listed above. 3 of those will further reduce NOx emissions from combustion units, and 3 will reduce ROC emissions from solvent and coatings sources. All of these control measures involve changes to existing rules that will further reduce the emissions from those specific source types. And as of now, none of those 6 control measures have yet been implemented. The 2016 plan identified that the district's designation might change to non-attainment transitional, but that outcome was uncertain at the time because we had not reached the end of the 2016 ozone season. Our next triennial update to the 1991 state plan is due in 2019, and we will begin that effort in late 2018. In the meantime, we need to address this change in our designation status. This change in our status from non-attainment to non-attainment transitional was finalized, as our director said, in April of 2017, and it's why we're here today. It means that we are getting closer and closer to attaining the state standard. We already attained the 1-hour standard, as you can see in that table, but we still exceed the 8-hour standard on some days. And this is great news. It demonstrates that our long-term, multi-pronged strategy for reducing air pollution in our county has been very successful. But it also means we are required, under this new designation, we're required by the California Clean Air Act to take a close look at the measures that were scheduled for adoption during the 3-year cycle of the 2016 ozone plan. If some or all of the measures are no longer necessary to attain and maintain the standard, they should be delayed or shifted to contingency measures. This is required by Section 40925.5 of the California Health and Safety Code, and the required evaluation is documented in the comprehensive report that's included in your board packet. So many of you are very familiar with this chart. It's included as Figure 2-1 of the report in your packet. It shows the number of exceedance days for the 8-hour standard in red and the 1-hour standard in blue. We recorded 3 or fewer exceedance days at any one monitoring station during both 2015 and 2016, which triggered this change to transitional. Most of our exceedance days occur in the spring or fall, and we haven't seen any exceedance days yet this year in 2017. If we record 4 or more exceedances at any one monitoring location this year, our designation will shift right back to non-attainment. You may be wondering why our designation didn't change earlier, because there are 3 or fewer exceedance days in 2011 and 2013. I'd just like to point out this is because the Air Resources Board won't proceed with the regulatory finding until data for the following year also indicate that there's a downward trend, and it's built into the state's designation process to avoid flip-flopping of having districts change to transitional 1 year and then back to non-attainment and back and forth. If more than 3 exceedances are recorded, you shift right back to non-attainment. So, pardon me. Knowing that this change to a transitional status would be finalized soon, staff prepared a report that addressed this requirement to reevaluate the control measure schedule in the 2016 ozone plan. We carefully considered a number of options to address this requirement, and we included 3 options for the Community Advisory Council, or CAC, to consider. At the February CAC meeting, staff reviewed those 3 options and also staff presented reasoning for proceeding with the recommended option, which was to move forward with the 3 NOx measures and shift the 3 ROC measures to a contingency status. The CAC discussed these options and ultimately recommended that the board adopt the second option. So our recommendation is based on the knowledge that our decades-long attainment strategy is working, and we're very close to attaining the state standard. Our existing rules, permits, and compliance programs ensure that all the existing measures that we have will continue to be effective. We're not proposing a change in our overall strategy. Rather, we're recommending an interim strategy to address this transitional status. And we expect that regulations and incentive programs at the state level, combined with our existing programs, will achieve additional emission reductions well into the future. The NOx measures that we recommend moving forward with are required for new or modified units. They will not require retrofits to existing equipment by a date certain. Cleaner equipment is available in the marketplace, and the emission reductions achieved with the cleaner equipment will be very long-term. We are required to update our ozone plan every 3 years, and the update process will involve looking at more recent ozone measurements, updating the emission inventory and forecasts, re-examining all the control measures and their implementation schedule. Although we plan to finalize that plan in 2019, in actuality, we'll begin that process of updating the plan in probably the second half of 2018. So, after, let's see, in March of this year, we gave your board an update on this item, and there was some discussion and Q&A, as you remember, along with some public comment. And on several occasions over the last year, we've spoken with California Air Resources Board staff about this change in designation and the requirements triggered by the Health and Safety Code. CARB staff offered technical support, and they also suggested some additional examination of our air quality monitoring data to ascertain whether our local air tends to be NOx limited. Although we've included some information in our report on the photochemical modeling that other districts have done, modeling is not required for our region, and it's a detailed and costly process. As suggested by CARB, we also looked at our air quality data to see whether ozone formation tends to be limited by the amount of NOx in the air. This study is attached to your report in your board packet, and it supports our strategy to seek additional NOx reductions to reduce ozone levels in the county. Your board packet today represents the culmination of several months of work done by district staff, the CAC, and consultation with the California Air Resources Board. So this is a summary of the recommendations in the board packet. The resolution revises the 2016 Ozone Plan Control Measure Implementation Schedule to proceed with the 3 NOx control measures in 2018 and to shift the 3 ROC measures to a contingency status. The NOx measures are common sense measures and provide a margin of safety to ensure that we continue to meet our obligations under the California Clean Air Act and continue the trend of cleaning the air for a healthy community. The resolution also includes adopting CEQA findings, including the addendum to the 2010 Clean Air Plan EIR, and authorizes the Air Pollution Control Officer to transmit the revised schedule to the Air Resources Board. So that's my presentation. Thank you. And any questions?
Yes, they're lining up for you.
No.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, good news that we're getting to this transitional period, and hopefully it'll become towards an attainment altogether. And I understand the requirement that you have to relook at everything, even though we just adopted this rule back in October, less than a year ago. And as I recall, it was a unanimous vote then. I've spoken with our APCO about this, and I know we had this conversation back in March, but it seems to me anyway that if things are working, we had a unanimous vote of a big project, even though there was this requirement to reassess everything. I don't see particularly why we should change the course that we're going when one of the options is just to keep what we had when we already adopted last October, which would be, I guess, of the 3 options, the first one. And if there's any issues regarding the ROC measures into the future, we can certainly look at that point if there's any other unintended consequence of those kind of rules when they come online. But to wait until 2019 to really think of it again, because it will be on contingency status, I don't know what the I don't know how that necessarily helps us keep moving towards non-attainment, even though that is an option because we've reached this transitional period. So I would just suggest to my colleagues that we had a unanimous vote of a good document less than a year ago, and we should just keep it the way it is, and if should something come up between now and 2019, we can address it at that point. But that was just, but I appreciate the staff and the work that you had to do, and hopefully we'll keep moving in the right direction, so.
Was there a question in there that we could
Well, so I
answer for
guess
you?
the question would be if there's agreement towards that, it seemed to me the resolution that we would have to pass would just slightly be altered to just include all 6 measures instead of just the 3, with moving the 3 over in a contingency. And I didn't know if that's something we could just decide to do today, or if there's something else that needed to occur. But that would be personally my preference. So I guess that's the question of, can we, amend the resolution that was in our packet to adjust it slightly for those other ROC measures? I don't know if that's a Mr. Dillon question.
Oh, just going forward, you need a resolution with evidence that supports a decision to delay any control measure that's currently on your implementation schedule. So if you decide to stay the status quo, we might want to come back with a resolution to memorialize that decision, but it would basically, the duty under the statute is that you revisit this issue and consider whether to delay or put measures into contingency. So you have to at least consider that. You've done that. Technically, you don't need to do a resolution to do nothing if you just decide to stay the course in terms of what the plan requires. But if you want to put any measures into either delay or contingency, then you really need a resolution.
Got it. So since this would be status quo, seems easier. I mean, it just seems like so we wouldn't need to do a new resolution like you're saying.
We might want to bring it back. You've got some CEQA findings and other determinations that we at least would want to revisit at the staff level. So if you were going to go that direction, I'd say that would be a conceptual action, and we bring it back for final action at your next regular board meeting.
So anyway, I just put that out to my colleagues. That was my statement and/or questions.
Thank you. I'm just curious why you're recommending what you are recommending with moving forward with the NOx and holding back on the ROC. If you could just explain why that's your suggestion.
I can start off, and if you want to add to it,
Sure.
how does that sound? Well, we looked at we talked with the State Air Resources Board and tried to get a better understanding of the overall effectiveness of NOx reduction versus ROC reductions. We had conversations with the CAC as well and talked about the pros and cons of continuing with all 6 or limiting that just to the NOx measures. Through that analysis of the overall effectiveness of reducing NOx emissions and the benefit that provides us for further local ozone reductions, combined with what we're seeing on the reduction of exceedance days in our county, we felt that provided the necessary buffer to reach attainment. That's also combined with the state measures. But it's true, another option could be to continue with all 6 status quo. We felt that since this is an evergreen document and we'll be coming back in the middle of 2018 to reassess, at that point in time, if we are not achieving or continuing in the downward trend, we can reassess and bring those measures back to an implementation scheduled date over the next triennial update.
Don't have much to add to that.
Any other questions, discussions? Public comment? No slips? Motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt staff recommendations.
Got a motion, a second?
So just
discussion?
I understand where they came from. I honestly just think we should just stay with the status quo and keep moving in hopefully getting towards attainment. I don't see why we would put something on contingency if we don't have to. We're moving in the right direction. So I know we had that discussion back in March, so I guess I'll be voting against this motion. Yeah.
I agree with Mayor Schneider on this. because I think where she was going, I think, was a more efficient and effective way to reach attainment, but I understand why staff and CAC came to this decision. I spoke with Ms. Arlen Janae and understand it, but anyway, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, just a question. I mean, we're not saying that if we put those 3 on contingency that we're delaying. No, we're not. Well, I was going to ask them, but we're not delaying achieving attainment, are we?
We envision that we're moving towards attainment with the NOx measures combined with what's on the state level. We're keeping the ROC measures in the plan as contingency if we need additional measures.
All right. But this isn't a choice between we're either going to the path of attainment or we're not going on the path of attainment based on the other 3.
Through the analysis, we believe this will assist us reach attainment.
Okay. That's what I'm looking for.
We had a question, one last question. Question was which way was faster?
Which way is faster? I don't know if we have that assessment.
Yeah, we're down to 3. If you have 3 or less, that's how you get into this non-attainment transitional category. So it's really a tough call to say which measure would get us there faster. We feel like we're going to get there, but mathematically or modeling, it's very difficult to model when you're getting down to that small amount of days.
That's fine. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
These changes are just for new installations, aren't they?
Yeah, for new boilers that are brought in or for replacement.
So there's no added cost to the current installations. It's just the newer stuff, when it's brought in, will cost.
The newer equipment at a lower emission level has a small or relatively small incremental cost associated with it, but it pencils out to be cost effective.
The existing population of equipment isn't going to be affected. It's just the new stuff.
Well, if the existing boiler doesn't work any longer, if you need to replace it at that point in time.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's do a roll call vote.
Director Snyder?
No.
Richardson?
Yes.
Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Aye. Adam?
Aye.
Lavanino? Aye. Sierra? Aye. Clark? Yes. Lizalde?
Aye.
And Chair Mosby?
Aye.
The motion passes 9-1.
Okay. Brings us down to the old admin item A8. In other words, we're adjourned until Thursday, September 7th in Santa Barbara at 3:30. Right? That's it? All right, adjourn.
Long